Good morning and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit quickly through the first part of this. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of Ravens 2, and then Jarrett is going to give you a demonstration of using Ravens 2 on Q Global. And then if we have time left at the end, we'll come back. I'll show you what a report looks like. You have a lot of information in your handout, a lot of screenshots in your handout that show you a lot of what Jarrett's going to demonstrate, but you can't put a live demonstration in a handout. So he went through and took screenshots of a lot of what he's going to show you, so that if you needed to take notes or wanted to go back and refer to them, you would have them. But we're not going to go through each and every one of those slides. So I want to get started here if I can get this to work. There we go. All right. So Ravens 2, I assume you know a little bit about Ravens 2. You've joined up to watch how to use Ravens 2 on Q Global. But the Ravens 2 is a nonverbal assessment of general cognitive ability. More specifically, Raven defines the trait that the progressive matrices measured as educative ability, and that's one of the key components of general intelligence, or G, identified by Spearman. Educative ability involves the ability to think clearly and solve complex problems, and the various derivations of Ravens have been widely used for more than 70 years in educational and clinical and occupational practice, as well as in academic research as a nonverbal measure of mental ability. It had gotten to be kind of a complex instrument, and so to reduce the assessment's complexity and maintain its legacy, Ravens 2 has combined the previous versions into a single test battery with novel items and contemporary normative information. It's designed to be given to those 4 years, 0 months through 90 years, 11 months. The items consist of universal geometric shapes that are recognizable with any level of education. The test requires only minimal verbal instruction and no spoken or written responses. So these features really minimize the impact that language skills and cultural backgrounds may have on the test performance. It's suitable for the assessment of a full range of cognitive ability in those who aren't language proficient, who have communication-related disabilities, or, again, who are from culturally diverse populations. Excuse me. It can be administered using the traditional paper format or digital format using Q Global, our web-based administration scoring and reporting platform, which I'll show you more about in a minute. The digital testing now enhances test security because it allows the examinee to take a unique set of items that are randomly selected from a large item bank. Obtaining estimates of general cognitive ability and rapidly and efficiently when administration of a comprehensive test battery is neither feasible nor necessary is one of the major applications of Ravens 2. The nonverbal nature of Ravens 2 makes it ideal for those who are not language proficient, as I mentioned, or who have communication-related disabilities, or who are from culturally diverse populations. It's used for screenings to determine if an in-depth evaluation is necessary, so maybe for someone in the area of learning disability or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, intellectual disability, or giftedness in various settings such as schools and correctional facilities, private practice, hospitals, and military recruiting centers. It's also used to reevaluate individuals who previously received a comprehensive evaluation, and used, again, when time available for retesting is limited. The top 5 uses of the Ravens are to estimate nonverbal ability, estimate IQ, use as a screening tool, to evaluate strengths and weaknesses, and to reduce language or cultural bias for bilingual evals. Older kids and adults can be tested in groups of any size, and it's recommended that there be an examiner present for every 10 to 15 examinees. Some very young children really should probably be tested individually or in smaller groups of fewer than 4 to ensure valid results. Jarrett's going to show you what the group administration consists of. So over the years, copyrighted test materials are considered public domain after a certain number of years have passed after publication. And over the years, items have been, item security had become a concern for test users because once they are publicly available, they're readily practiced or memorized. And the older, the widespread adoption of the older versions really resulted in overexposure over time of test items. So many of the original test items and their solutions are really easy to find. Now, if you Google security, Ravens, and click images, you're going to find images from the older versions online. And so you can find them on websites, in published books, or in training materials. So as a result, most of the original Ravens progressive matrices items are public domain, and they're no longer secure. So test scores that are based on overexposed or insecure items can be significantly inflated, and that threatens, of course, the fairness and validity of the assessment results. So the revision of the Ravens primarily focused on creating all new items, enhancing test security, and controlling item exposure rate. So all of the Ravens 2 items are newly developed. They do retain, of course, the underlying cognitive constructs that were measured by the Ravens progressive matrices. In addition to the 3 traditional item types, the 1x1, 2x2, and 3x3, there's a new item type, a 1x6, that was included. And unlike the original Ravens progressive matrices, where the missing piece was always placed in the bottom right corner of the matrix, the position of the missing piece in the Ravens 2 matrices varies. And in addition, all of the items were designed with 1 or more colors to make them more interesting and aesthetically pleasing to the examinees. Of course, careful analysis and expert review ensured that the color usage did not introduce bias against any individual with color perception problems. And then other major revision goals, of course, included developing contemporary and representative normative information, providing reliability and validity evidence, and increasing user-friendliness and extending the test's age range. So the components of Ravens are, they include the test manual for both digital and paper administration, a digital long form with millions of unique randomly assembled item sets, a digital short form also with millions of unique randomly assembled item sets, a paper form with fixed item sets in one test booklet, an answer sheet for examinees to input their personal identification information and to mark their response choice to each test item, and a scoring template to assist examiners with scoring the test for those who are using hand scoring. And we're not going to cover hand scoring in this webinar today because this is to talk about administering the Ravens on QGlobal. QGlobal is Pearson's web-based platform for test administration, scoring, and reporting, and it's primarily focused on the administration of questionnaires and rating scales and inventories, and there are several different ways to administer, and we're going to focus on 2 of these today because they are what's available for the Ravens. And the first of these that you see here is manual entry, and that's where you can use paper and pencil administration as you traditionally have, and then use QGlobal for scoring. So you enter the scores into QGlobal, enter the responses into QGlobal, and they're scored. Jarrett's going to demonstrate that for you. And then you can also administer on screen. You can administer the assessment on the screen of any web-enabled device. And again, Jarrett's going to demonstrate that for you. So this kind of reiterates that. In general, with QGlobal, you can administer on paper, you can administer using QGlobal, and many people tend to use the either all digital, or they use this hybrid manual entry where they administer on paper and use QGlobal to score and report. These are the 2 that Jarrett's going to demonstrate today, the manual entry and the all digital entry. The paper form, for those of you who will administer in paper and then enter the scores into QGlobal for scoring, the paper form has a total of 60 fixed test items with 5 sets of 12 items. Item sets A, B, and C are administered to children ages 4 years, 0 months through 8 years, 11 months, and older adults, those aged 80 years, 0 months through 90 years, 11 months. Item sets B, C, and D are administered B, C, D, and E are administered to children and adults ages 9 years, 0 months through 79 years, 11 months. The time limits for the test are 30 minutes for the shorter form, the 4 years, 11 months, 4 years to 8 years, 11 months, and 45 minutes for those 9 years through 90 years, 11 months. The paper form doesn't have a discontinue rule. The examinees complete either all 36 or 48 items, depending on the form, and they should not skip or revisit items. If used for out-of-level testing when you're using the paper format, although the recommended testing items are sets B, C, D, and E for ages 9 through 79, it is acceptable to test individuals with lower ability in this age range using item sets A, B, and C, because the ability scores that are derived using the different sets are comparable. The digital long form has 36 items for those ages 4 years through 8 years, 11 months, and those 80 years through 90 years, 11 months, and it has 48 items for those in the middle ranges, ages 9 years through 79 years, 11 months. The time limits here are 30 minutes for the younger kids and 45 minutes for those 9 and older. Each examinee digitally is given a unique set of items randomly selected from the item bank. The examinees are not able to skip any items or review previous items. The digital long form has a discontinue rule beginning with item 11. If the examinee produces 6 incorrect responses in a row, the Q Global system automatically terminates the assessment. The number of items administered to examinees really may be different depending on how soon the discontinue criteria is met. A valid digital long form test administration requires a minimum administration of 16 items, though. The digital short form includes 24 items for all ages. Each examinee completes, again, a unique set of items that are randomly selected from the item bank, and they have a time limit of 20 minutes. Examinees can't skip any items or review previous items. There is a discontinue rule beginning with item 11. If the examinee produces 6 incorrect responses in a row, Q Global will automatically terminate the assessment. Like the paper form, the administration time limits for the digital forms, so this is an important point. The time limits that you have, whether you're giving the paper form or you're giving the digital formats, the examinee needs to be using a timer to time the actual time that's spent by the client or student or examinee taking the test, because the administration time limits don't include the time needed for the examiners to prepare, for the examiners to read the administration directions, or to respond to examinee questions, or for any time that's lost because of unexpected interruptions during testing, so breaks or anything like that. The Q Global system does not track the true actual administration time during the administration, so regardless of the format, the examiners need the stopwatch to monitor the testing time and ensure that the time limit is correctly enforced. So the examiner needs to be aware that if they're going to stop and give some extra verbal directions or extra help, they need to be stopping the timer, because that time limit, again, has to do with the time that the examinee is spending actually taking the test. So in a group testing session, examinees who finish before the testing time expires are able to sit and wait or be dismissed at the examiner's discretion. And the Q Global test does not automatically end when the time limit is reached. So if examinees are still working on the test when the testing time expires, which is going to rarely happen because there's a very small percentage of folks who don't complete in under that time limit. But if that happens, the examinees are need to be instructed by the examiner to close the test window, and if necessary, the examiner may close the test window if necessary. Jarrett's going to mention that again when he goes through the demonstration, because that's just one of those important points. Again, it's a rare event that somebody is still testing when the time limit is up, but when it happens with the paper form, the examiner says stop and ensures that the examinee stops testing, and the same needs to happen with the computer administration. All right, so looking at which form to use, I'm really going to kind of hit the highlights here. The forms in the digital format are all assembled randomly from large item banks, as I mentioned, and they, of course, provide this automated visual teaching that we're going to go through, test administration, scoring, and reporting. It is best practice to use the digital forms because large numbers of unique item sets reduce the item exposure rate and increase the test security. And there's a lot of other advantages to using digital administration and scoring. The digital forms, those discontinue rules reduce, measurement error due to random guessing as well as testing time. So when possible, using the digital form is going to always be best practice. You want to administer the paper form if there's no connection to the internet, if computers aren't available, or if examinees aren't comfortable taking a digital test. The testing time may be slightly longer because there is no discontinue rule. And for individuals with low general cognitive ability, more random guessing is possible when using the paper form. The digital short form shares most of the advantages of the digital long form, but of course it exchanges a slight reduction in measurement precision for that shorter testing time. It is, however, very reliable and valid as a screening tool when testing time is the main concern. So for paper administration, the examiner needs the Ravens 2 manual, the test booklet, the answer sheet to provide directions, and the stopwatch or other timing device. If you are going to use hand scoring, you need the scoring template, and that's the part we're not going to go through today. The examinee can identify item responses in that test booklet or on an answer sheet, and if they're responding on the answer sheet, they're going to need a test booklet, an answer sheet, and pencils with erasers, and an answer sheet. Materials required for digital administration include the manual, access to Pearson's Q Global platform, and an examiner's practice link, which is available to help the examiner become familiar with the digital test administration. The Ravens 2 digital long form and short form are available through the Q Global platform for automated test administration, scoring, and reporting. And for the digital administration, the examiner will need the Ravens 2 manual and a stopwatch or other timing device. So each examinee then will need a computer with an internet access and a mouse, or they need any sort of a tablet device that doesn't reduce the size of the stimuli to very small or miniature. So just a normal size tablet would also suffice. To help examiners familiarize themselves with the digital test administration, the Ravens 2 Examiner's Practice link is available as part of the Q Global system, and Jarrett's going to make sure that you know how to find that, that you're able to know where to go, because this link will guide you as the examiner through the software, through the system, to present the demonstration items, the sample items, and a few simulated test items. It helps you become familiar with the process. And you're able to use it over and over again until you're comfortable with the digital test administration directions, the workflow, the automated sample item feedback, and the expanded directions. It really serves as a practice session so you understand how to administer the visual teaching items online. The visual teaching will be exactly the same as what the examinees are going to be shown for demonstration and sample items. And so we really recommend that everybody administer this via the computer to use the examiner link to help you practice the digital test administration. And again, you can use it over and over until you are comfortable with the process. And Jarrett will show you how to access that. So the digital format provides the demonstration items that introduce navigation within the test workflow. Both the digital and the paper formats provide sample items that are designed to teach the examinee, and they allow practice with the different item types. And then if an examinee doesn't understand the sample items or the task requirements, there are expanded directions for further explanation. The Ravens 2 uses several icons that are designed to cue examiners and examinees of necessary required actions, and here are two. This is the Wait and Listen icon and the Assist icon. For both digital and paper administrations, the Wait and Listen icon, which either appear in red, yellow, or green, those indicate to the examinee to stop and listen for directions while examiners read the demonstration or sample or expanded or the test item directions. The Assist icon, during the digital administration, the Assist icon will appear automatically if an examinee selects two incorrect responses for a given sample item. And this icon then cues the examinee to raise their hand for assistance, and it cues the examiner to read the expanded directions. The administration will not continue to the next item until the examiner provides these directions. I see a question about during directions, does the timer stop or continue timing? You, the examiner, are in control of the timer. Remember, you have to have a stopwatch yourself or some means of keeping time yourself, because the time in any sort of an automated system, the Q Global system is not set up to actually time the time that the examinee is spending on the test. It times an overall time. So you, the examiner, have to use the stopwatch. For the demonstration items, you ensure that the examinees locate and click the arrow to proceed to the next item. You can see that there's 3 animated demonstration items that play sequentially and automatically. These are not interactive. The examinees just watch them on their screens, and then the yellow wait and listen icon appears when the last demonstration item animation has concluded. So the general process is that you seat the examinees, you provide the materials they need, you ensure that they have recorded their demographics, their name, test date, and birth date, or you have done so for them. You inform them not to mark on the test booklet unless they're completing it without an answer sheet. So then if the examinee is unfamiliar with standardized testing, you may have to tell them about using the test booklet and the answer sheet, like how to locate item numbers and how to indicate a correct response, how to circle the dot, identifying item sets and things like that. But you would do all of that. You would orient them to the testing session before you begin reading the sample item directions. So you ask them then to turn the test page to the booklet, to the page that shows the yellow wait and listen icon. You inform them to stop and wait to hear directions when they see a wait and listen icon. When they're using the test booklet without the answer sheet, you replace the words fill in with circle in the directions instead of the directions to, let's see, it shows it on here, replace fill in with circle. Right, so you would say circle instead of saying fill in if they're using the test booklet without the answer sheet. And then you read the expanded directions in bold text for the appropriate sample item only to examinees who respond incorrectly. You don't read the expanded directions for subsequent sample items unless they respond incorrectly to a specific sample item. If you're testing examinees with special needs, sometimes people will ask this question, so I just wanted to answer it ahead of time. Sometimes people with special needs may be unable to record responses either using the digital or paper format. It is permissible for the examiner to assist these examinees by recording their responses. The examiner can use the mouse to click the examinee's response choice, or they may use the pencil to mark the examinee's response on the answer sheet. And it is probably preferable for the examinees to these examinees to be tested individually so that they can have that kind of attention from the examiner rather than in a group session. As far as scoring using Q Global, the digital forms are scored automatically using the Q Global platform when the report is generated, and if you are using a paper form, you'll select the Q Global manual entry option that Jarrett's going to show you and then enter the required examinee's information and item responses. So you'll see what that looks like now because Jarrett is going to demonstrate. Jarrett?
All right, thank you, Dr. Kimball. And what I'm actually going to do for you guys today is actually share my desktop screen. So I'm going to start working on that right now. Just give me a quick second or two. There we go. And what we should see is my Q Global screen. And what we're going to do is actually walk through what the Ravens 2 looks like on Q Global. So if we're just doing the scoring for a paper-administered assessment, we're going to walk through that paper version. Or if we are administering either of the forms, either the digital long form or short form, we're going to take a look at one of those as well. So really brief, logged into Q Global here. Again, you can see yourself as the user, as well as the account that you've logged into. And below here, we're going to see all the examinee profiles that you've created on your account. Now, for new users to Q Global, maybe you are currently not a Q Global user, kind of learning about it for the first time. When we're talking about the assessment process, I always like to kind of break it down into 4 steps. And those steps are simply locating a profile. That in itself may be to create one using the new examinee button. So again, we're going to locate a profile. We're going to assign an assessment to the profile. We're going to administer the assessment, and then we can generate the report. And we're going to walk through those 4 steps today for the Ravens 2. So for example, let's say that I want to administer an assessment to my Ravens 2 sample examinee. What I'm going to do is I already have the profile created, so that's kind of step 1, locating it right here. Next, I can simply assign an assessment to the individual, and there's a few ways of doing it, but we're going to focus right on here on the home page today. So I can select the individual's row just by clicking on the checkbox, and we can even see that it highlights it for us. And then we can click New Assessment. And when we click on the Assign New Assessment button, we are going to see a window showing all of the assessments available within our Q Global account. And if we go ahead and type in the Ravens 2, we're going to see the 3 options. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to favorite those really quick to make it a bit easier to find them in the future. Just kind of add them to My Favorites tab here. And regardless of the form that I want to assign, all I'm going to need to do here is select the form by clicking on the corresponding radio button. So maybe we'll start with the paper form today. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Assign. And actually assigning the assessment does 2 things. It will actually assign the assessment to the individual's profile, and then it actually navigates us into the assessment, what we simply refer to as the Assessment Details page. Now on the Assessment Details page, we're actually going to see the examinee details, so all the information from their profile, like the identifying information as well as gender and date of birth for standardization. And we can scroll down and see the assessment details, where we are going to see the assessment name, so essentially the assessment and the version, so the paper form that we've assigned. The status, it's ready for administration. We haven't entered in any scores yet. The administration date, and if we are doing the paper form, we may need to change this depending on when they completed it, as well as the ability to select the examiner, and it's going to show us the delivery or administration method. Now, as Dr. Kimball mentioned earlier, there are a number of administration methods available within Q Global. Like we have a manual entry, which is what we're going to focus on right here. But we also have 2 digital methods. And the way that this is going to work in Q Global is that when we assign an assessment, we are only going to see the corresponding delivery method. So because this is for the paper form, we're only seeing the manual entry option. So it's going to be really easy to figure out, hey, which form did I assign? Not only by the name, but also by the delivery method for the Ravens 2. Now, what we're going to want to do is scroll down a bit, and we're going to see 2 tabs right here. Our Demographics tab, which allows us to select the item set. So again, we can change that here if and as needed, as well as we have a bunch of other categories like the grade, the testing site, referral, ethnicity, diagnosis, and we have the ability to select all of those pieces of information if you so choose. Again, these parts right here are not required, as we don't see a red asterisk like the administration date. But as a general rule of thumb, the more information we put into the report, again, simply the more comprehensive it is. Now, when we are ready to enter in the items themselves, so again, after the test is administered, we have our scores. We would kind of walk through the steps we just went through. We'd click on the Items tab right here, and this is going to show us our sets right here. So I'm going to see sets B, C, D, and E. So we're going to see those right here and the 12 questions that compose those sets. Now, what we're going to do within Q Global is we're simply going to click on one of these items. So for example, starting with item 1, and we're going to enter in either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, depending on the item itself that the individual chose. So again, this would kind of mirror the left being 1 and right being 5. And as we work through here, again, I'm just going to do some random responding quick. We don't need to make this look like anything specific. But as we navigate through and we add the responses, we're going to see that it actually navigates us down from cell to cell, makes it easy. And if we do enter in an item that is not compatible with the given assessment, we are going to see a little error notification. So it's going to turn yellow. We get a nice little caution sign letting us know that the entered value is not valid. So again, there is going to be a visual reminder. If you're really quick on the 10 key, you accidentally click something else, not a problem. It's simply going to give you that reminder. After we've entered in all the items, we're simply going to scroll back up to the top, and we're going to see 2 sets of these Save, Save and Close, and Cancel buttons. really quick, cancel button does just what it says. It's going to cancel it, acting as if we had never assigned the assessment to our individual. Pretty self-explanatory. The save button actually saves our assessment, allowing us to continue editing it. So we do encourage individuals to save for assessments that do require a lot of items to be entered in. And we have a save and close button. And this actually does two things. It does save it, just like the save button, but it's actually also going to close the assessment. And when we do close it, we do see that everything's grayed out a bit. And the reason why we have to close the assessment is that we cannot generate a report for an assessment that is actively being administered or edited. And that's what we're doing right here. We're editing the assessment. So by closing it, we're now going to see an edit button, a generate report button, and a notification that the assessment record was saved successfully. So we're good to go. So we can actually navigate back to the home page, and we have that report button. We can see it right here. Or we could simply click on the individual's row to navigate into their profile. We could select it and generate the report. Or we could even just click onto the assessment itself, kind of navigating right back to that assessment details page, indicating that we can generate the report from the assessment itself, so just like we saw before. So again, if we are doing the paper version, all that we need to do is locate the profile, assign the paper form, manually enter in those scores for the given sets, and we're ready to generate the report. Now what I want to do is focus on the digital for kind of like the remaining of the demonstration today, and we're just going to pick either the long form or the short form. They actually are administered digitally in the exact same fashion. Of course, the items, the length of the form, the number of items is of course the different part. But before we jump into showing the digital administration method, I actually want to start on the resource library. And the reason why I want to do this is that the resource library itself is where we contain all of our sample reports, appendices. We even have our user guide and training videos under the About Q Global section. But the reason why I want to start here is if I scroll all the way down and find the Ravens 2, there it is. I can expand it quick, and I'm going to see a general folder right here. And under the general folder, we're going to see a few different documents, such as sample reports. But the two I want to focus on are the About documents, and we do have About documents for all assessments within Q Global. But specifically, I want to focus on the digital administration directions, because it's within this document, and again, we can print this off as needed, that we are going to see additional information on how to administer it on Q Global using this on-screen administration method. And as we scroll down, again, it's going to give us guidelines in terms of becoming familiar, kind of, again, reading the manual, making sure, again, that we understand the assessment, how to administer it, and it gives us a lot of great information about the physical environment itself. Again, as mentioned in the previous slides, testing examinees with special needs, the group size recommendations, as well as, again, the icons automated feedback. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second as well. But if we scroll down a bit more, we are going to see our digital administration directions themselves. And it's this page that's going to give us instructions on how to administer the assessment during the test session, as well as our administration directions. And it's here that we're actually going to see the prompts that we'll need to say when we need to say them. And it's going to have examples and kind of walk everything through. And in fact, I'm going to use this as part of my demonstration today, but I wanted to start by letting you guys know exactly where it was. So again, if this is an assessment you plan on using digitally, where you can print this off, and again, it's a nice resource to become familiar with the test administration. Again, this is simply in the resource library right under the general folder for the Ravens 2, digital administration directions. All right, so let's go ahead and walk through this. And for example, I might just go ahead and assign the short form. So to assign the short form, I'm going to do the exact same thing we did for the paper. So I'm going to select the individual, click Assign New Assessment. And again, it's going to be identical for either one. It's simply the number of items. So I'm simply going to select the digital short form, click on Assign. And this is going to navigate me right back to that assessment details page, just like we saw with the paper version. The big difference here, though, is that we are going to see a Start Assessment button right here up at the top and the bottom, and that the page is just a bit different. And how it's different is that, again, on-screen administration method right here. with the option to launch the test session lock to lock them on the assessment so they can't like surf the web. You do have the ability to send out a completion notification to the indicated party. By default, it will show your email address. Otherwise, the other big thing is we are going to notice that the items themselves, we can't actually indicate responses here because these will actually be endorsed through the digital administration. So we'll still see the items, and in fact, when the test has been completed, these will actually be saved to the assessment details page so they can be reviewed. Otherwise, to get started, all that we're going to need to do, click Start Assessment. And when we do so, we are always going to see this little notice within the system, just letting you know that anytime you do provide a third party with access to your testing device, just make sure it's secure. So we're just going to click I acknowledge. And what this is going to do is actually two things for those new to the digital administration methods. It is going to open up a new tab of your web browser. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. Actually, we're going to leave it where it was. I don't want to distort things too much. So again, it is going to open up a new tab of the web browser displaying the assessment and the instructions. The second thing is that it will log you out of Q Global, and this is intentional to help preserve the confidentiality of your data if you decide not to use that test session lock. So again, just a heads up, this is an intended security feature for those new to the digital administration method. Jumping back into the assessment itself, we are going to see, again, our instructions right here. And we are going to be prompted right here to click the directional arrow to continue. So we can see Ravens 2, sample examinee, date of birth, so all that demographic information. And then we're going to click the next button. And here, what we're going to see is the listen image that was shown earlier in the slides. And kind of looking at my administration directions, I'm really starting right here. So I would say, when I say go, click the blue arrow on the bottom. You will see some pictures with missing see some pictures with a missing piece. Watch how the computer chooses a piece that finishes each picture. Go ahead. And at that point, the individual would click the directional arrow right here, and we're going to be prompted with the first of 3 sample items. And as mentioned earlier, this is something that we cannot interact with. It's actually all automated, and it's simply showing the examinee how to complete items. So we're just going to watch it really quick. Shouldn't take too much longer. So we're going to show that we simply click on the item, and that when we select it, it's going to fill in the box. And it's just kind of showing the respective pattern, and that if the item is selected correctly, we have that green screen that appears behind with the nice big check mark, letting them know that they did answer the question correctly. Now, this is actually that new item that we talked about earlier. So previously, we had the 1x1, the 2x2, the 3x3. So this is that 1x6 design. And again, it's just kind of walking through how this specific test item is administered. And again, this is all automated, so they can't click on the arrow to navigate through it. They are required to watch these 3 sample items. So again, we're going to wait for this one as well. Just about done. All right. Now, after those 3 automated kind of, again, simply walking through the assessment, those sample items are done, we are going to see a new listen symbol. And in fact, these listen icons are actually going to change color depending where we are within the assessment. So the first one was red. This one is now yellow. So again, that wait and listen. And we will read the next set of instructions. Next, you will do some yourself. Click the piece that finishes the picture. When the arrow turns blue, click on it to see the next picture. So we're going to go ahead, I should say the examiner would go ahead and click on the next option, and they're going to see that first item. And they are going to see 3 sample items, and again, these are the same. So what they're going to do is simply grab the mouse, just like before, just like the sample items demonstrated, and they would select the item. And because this is a sample item, again, it's going to have it appear here. The nice green box appears in the background, prompting us to navigate to the next page. Now, when we're going through this for the sample items, we are going to see a few different prompts as we go through. So again, we saw the green background if it was correct. If it is an incorrect item, let's say I just click on the blue square quick, the blue circle quick, we are going to see that a red background appears with a little X, and it shows them the correct item. So it's showing them how to administer the test, and it kind of works its way through it again. So it's teaching them how to complete the test. Now, if a second incorrect response is selected, so let's say I click on the larger red circle this time, we're actually going to see this image appear. So this is simply the assist icon. And what we do is if the assist icon appears, they'd simply be instructed to kind of raise their hand, and we provide further instructions. Now, what we're going to do here is that there are actually a set of expanded directions for each of these 3 sample items. And again, this is all within that digital administration direction. So for sample item 2 right here, what I would do to kind of get them to the next page, because again, the arrow is grayed out, we would simply click on the help link right here, and it's going to bring us right back here. And we would provide the expanded directions. So we would say the little red circle should come next in order. And then we'd encourage the examinee to click on the correct response. So we'd select it, see the green, and then they'd be able to progress to the next item. And the same thing is going to happen for this third one right here. They would select their response. They're going to see whether or not it was correct or incorrect, and navigate to the next page. Here we're going to see that third, wait and listen. Again, this one's green. And now we're simply going to read, now you know what to do. There are more pictures with missing pieces. Click the piece that finishes the picture. When the arrow turns blue, click on it to see the next picture. At this point, we would start the timer. Again, as mentioned earlier by Dr. Kimball, Q Global is not timing in the background. This is absolutely something that you would do with a timer. So at this point, we would start the timer, and they would navigate to the next item. And what they're going to do is simply complete the items, again, as presented. So for example, let's say item 2. We're going to notice that for actual test items, so non-sample, we are not seeing that background feedback, and they're simply going to navigate from page to page, again, with the items getting a bit harder as we navigate through. Now, we would continue administering the test item really for 3 conditions, and we'd continue and the test would stop when all the test items are completed, or we have hit that kind of discontinue rule, and we would need to have the first 16 or so items completed in order to establish that basal. So again, 6 consecutive items of 0 after that would trigger the discontinue. Or the last item, or the last kind of stopping point for the assessment would be if time runs out on your end. So if you do hit that time cutoff, we would simply close the assessment. So again, I'm not going to actually go through and answer all the test questions themselves, but again, maybe a few more just to kind of work through it. But let's say that the time does run out. What we would do is simply close the tab, and we're good to go. The way that this system is going to read this, again, if we do hit that time, that 45 minutes or so, or 30 minutes, depending on the form, we'd simply close out of it again, or encourage the individual to close out of the assessment. And how Q Global is going to score this is after 1 day has elapsed that the assessment has not been reopened, it's going to move the assessment from an in progress to a ready for reporting stage. And again, we'd really only want to close it if they didn't finish all the items or they did not hit that discontinue point when doing the digital version. So again, we would close the tab, and that would allow us to go ahead and generate the report after that day in which they did not restart the digital administration. I do want to point out that, again, all of the information, the instructions, are in the digital assessment guide right here, as are the kind of the stopping points within the About the Ravens 2 document, also within the resource library. And again, this is the document that I just walked through today. I highly encourage giving it a look, and again, maybe working with this while you practice. Speaking of practicing, earlier we mentioned a examiner's practice link. And I'm going to log back in quick. What the examiner's practice link does is it actually allows you to become familiar with the assessment without actually assigning anything or actually walking through a quote-unquote practice, examining a practice assessment. Now, this link itself is actually accessible through the assessment help page. And to get there, it's actually on the assessment details. So for example, if I just open up the assessment, let's say, so I'm just going to open up let's just open up the one that we just started. We should see the assessment help link right towards the bottom right. Here it is. And if we click on it, it's going to open up a new tab of our web browser. And here's that practice link. So what you could do is click on the practice link for the first time. You know, open up a new tab, and you could just bookmark this. Maybe you just want to say, hey, this is that, Ravens 2 practice link, and you can always come back to it as needed. The nice thing about the practice link is what it's doing is simply walking us through that first portion of the Ravens 2. So where we saw the wait and listen prompts, where we saw the, the guided tutorial, or where we saw the practice items, that's really what this practice link is doing. It's showing us that first part so we can follow along with the instructions for the digital administration guide, that digital administration instructions from the resource library. And again, it's allowing us to walk through it and practice before we proctor this to either a group or on an individual basis. So again, that's where we're going to find the practice link. It's right here. And again, this should be indicated in the handout as well. So we can simply find it right here if you want to bookmark it so it's easy to come back to as needed. Absolutely, go for it. Now, I just mentioned group administration versus individual administration. That's really what we've walked through at this time, individual administration. But what happens if you do want to administer it to a group of individuals or to, well, again, we already talked about individuals, so a group of individuals. Maybe, again, it's around 15 or so or plus. Maybe you'd have another examiner to assist you with that. Let's walk through that because we do have a group administration method available within Q Global. And we're just going to spend the next just few minutes. There's nothing too new here. It's just modifying an extra step or two to our kind of 4-step assessment process. So if I want to create a group, I can actually do it 2 ways. We can actually select individuals right here on the home page that we would like to add to our group and click this Create Group button. And we'd be prompted to name the group, maybe write any comments, any details about the assessment. Or what I prefer to do, and kind of the way that we're going to walk through it today, is simply click on the group administration option. Because it's through this tab up here at the top that we are going to see all the groups that we have created and assigned an assessment to. So if we wanted to create a new group today, we click on the new group button, and we're going to see that exact same window that we saw for the create a group. So maybe I'm just going to call this Ravens demo. Real exciting. I'm going to save it. And that's actually going to navigate me into the group. So we can almost think of this as our modified home page when we log in, because it does give us the ability to manage examinees and assign assessments and even generate reports that have been assigned to the group or for individuals that have completed it through the group. Now, really the first step that we're going to want to do is determine how we want to add our examinees to the group. And there's 2 ways of doing it. The first would be through this Manage Examinee tab, and we can go ahead and add already created examinee profiles to our group. So I could click the Add to Group option, and I could select specific individuals. Maybe I want to do an advanced search, maybe find individuals with, Ravens in the first name. I have a few individuals like that. Search, add those individuals to my group. Perfect. Or again, we can simply add to group and select anybody right there. So maybe my Friday demo, Tuesday demo. Again, we can see I'm real creative with my naming. So again, we can add those individuals to the group. So that's one way of doing it. We can create the profiles before. Q Global also allows for a upload option, like an import option. More information on that in the resource library. Or what we could do is actually a self-register option, which would actually allow you to not add individuals, like not create the profiles before, and have the profiles created through the assessment itself. And we'll look at that in just a second. But again, went back one too many, not a problem. Just click on the group to navigate back into it. So again, we do have our Manage Examinees, and I have my 4 individuals right here. The next thing that we'd want to do is simply assign an assessment to the group. So if I want to assign the Ravens 2, I can assign the assessment. I'm going to select the long form. going to assign it right here. And when we assign it, we're going to see a modified assessment details page where we are going to see the administration date. I'm just going to select today. And we're going to see all the other information that we saw within the assessment details. And there is an optional consent form within Q Global, and administrators can look at that through the Manage Accounts link. Recommend checking out the manual for more information on that. But we are going to click Save, and we're simply saving it to the group itself. So these are all the assessments that have been saved to our group. You could theoretically have more than one assessment saved to a group, but we're only going to focus on the Ravens 2, just this digital long form for today. But you can edit it as needed, and you can even unassign it from the group. But what I'm going to do in order to start it is simply click on the assessment's name. And this is going to navigate me into the group. So again, into the group assessment details page. And here, we're going to see a few things. The first, we're going to see some assessment information right up here. And below, we're actually going to see all of our individuals, all of our examinees that we added to the group. Now, if we did add examinees to the group, like my Ravens 2 Tuesday, Friday, and Ravens 2, again, real creative with my naming, we're going to want to print off the authorization form, because within this authorization form, they have a unique session ID number that corresponds with their profile. So what we're going to want to do is click on the Print Authorization button. This is going to download an Excel document, so we're going to select it. See my messy desktop for a second, always exciting. But then it's actually going to open up a Excel document that's going to go ahead and display the session code. So if I wanted to start the assessment for my Ravens 2 sample examinee, this is kind of the individual we've been working with all day, I would copy this session code right here, and then I can navigate back to Q Global, and I'm going to simply open up this qglobal.pearsonclinical.com registration link. And upon opening it, opens up a new tab of our web browser. We can enter in the unique session code. I'm going to try my best to get this CAPTCHA on the first try. Sometimes it's hard to prove I'm not a robot in the morning, but we're going to try. Oh, looks like I got it. Excellent. And then it's going to open up the assessment, just like we would have done it if we assigned it on an individual basis. The only difference, again, that we're simply opening it in a way that you could go ahead and maybe copy this link and open it up on each computer, and then simply have the individual enter in their code, or if you want to enter it for them, kind of like you're assigning the seating, and it's automatically assigned to their profile. You don't have to log into Q Global, create the profiles, assign the assessment, on the spot for each and every individual. No, you just have this link. Again, we would open it, enter in the unique session code, enter in the information, and they're good to go. So again, that's what we would do if we that's what we would do if we kind of pre-register in a way. We already have the profiles and we assign it. The second way you could do it, I'm just going to close out of these to help mitigate any confusion. The second thing that we could do is actually self-register for an assessment. And by self-registering, we would still click on that exact same link, regardless if we self-register or add individuals to the group. But then what we're going to do is simply go ahead and copy this session code right here. And what this represents is kind of a blank profile or a blank registration code. Because if we go ahead and enter it, and again, I'm going to try to pretend I'm not a robot. Let's see if I can get it twice in a row. Hasn't changed. That should make it easy. What's going to happen is that it's actually going to go ahead and prompt them to enter in their information. So maybe you want this page open on each computer. So when they sit down, you go ahead and enter in their information. And again, we'll say John is a male, and I'll enter his date of birth. I'm just going to say October 1st of 2007. And then we hit register and start assessment. And by doing so, this registering and starting the assessment, it's actually going to go ahead and create a new profile for John. And just by refreshing, here it is. And the status is ready. He's ready to start the assessment. And it's going to proceed in the identical fashion that we saw on the individual basis. So again, if you do plan on administering this in a group, great. You have two options. You can create the profiles before and simply add them to the group, or you could go ahead and have individuals self-register. Again, maybe you're going to have them simply walk in. They're going to sit down at a computer. Maybe you have that up, so they just enter in their information, and they're all set, prompted to wait for your instructions when everybody's ready to go. So again, you guys got options. You can do it individually or you can do it as a group fashion. Last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do it a little quick just in consideration of time, is talk about reporting. And in terms of reporting, if we are going through a group, as we do complete the assessment, as the assessments are completed, we do see a reports option that will display them right here. But regardless if they're administered individually or as a group basis, we can always generate the reports from the report tab, from the assessment details page, or my personal preference is right from their profile. So I can select an assessment that is ready for reporting and click Generate Report, select the report type, and it's going to navigate me to my report configuration window, where I can select the format, either a PDF or Microsoft Word document. You can see the inventory that I have, my configuration options. The second location that we can see the assessment help, again, this is where the practice link is. In this case, it's opening up automatically to configuring the report, but we can modify that on the left-hand side right here. We can simply jump between that information. And when I'm ready, I'm just going to click Generate Report. And this is going to compile all the scores for me and download it to the Downloads folder of my computer. So I can click on it. It's going to open up a new tab in my web browser because I'm using Chrome. And right here, I can see my report. So my summary and my standard score profile, as well as the score summary and maybe any comments that were provided for the assessment. Now, I'm actually going to transfer it back to Dr. Kimball in just a second. So give me 1 second while I stop sharing my screen. We're going to finalize kind of talking about reporting, a little bit more on that, and we'll see if there's any outstanding questions that we may have time for. Give me 1 second.
Hey, Jarrett, before you transfer it back.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Good. So could you show how to get to the examiner's link one more time so that people can see where to go to practice themselves? That's one of the outstanding questions we have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's look at it again. Again, it's a bit hidden, so we do want to make sure that you guys can see it. And again, there is a screenshot in the handout. I'm going to make this a bit bigger so we don't see that a little annoying window. But what we do is we just navigate to the assessment details page. So if you just assigned an assessment, or you can even look at an already administered assessment, we simply have an assessment help link, and it's right here on the assessment details page. We can see it right down here, kind of towards the middle bottom of the page, right here, assessment help. And if we click on it, it's going to open up that new tab of your web browser. That's going to indicate that practice link. And if we click on it, it's going to open up, look like just a normal assessment. And again, my recommendation is maybe you want to bookmark this, maybe kind of add it to your favorites and indicate that it is the, Ravens, helps if I could spell Ravens to, practice link. And the nice thing here is that this in itself does not require you to be signed into Q Global. So if you save it, you could absolutely log out and still use that link if and as needed. So maybe you just need a quick refresher. You could pull it up real quick and you'll be set. But again, it's on the assessment details page. We're going to see an assessment help page or assessment help link, and that's where it is right here, the practice link right here. All right, so let's throw it back again. And again, we can finalize with reports and again, see if there's any questions that we can answer quickly. So Dr. Kimball, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Jarrett, so much. I have been typing furiously, answering various questions. You can see if you can address a couple that are there while I cover the report really quickly. I just want to show you the report. It is an individual report. I just had a couple of questions about that, about whether or not, you can get the class level or group level reports. You can create the group, as Jarrett showed you, in order to provide the assessment, but not obtain a group level report, a group level score report. They are individual, as you see here. So this is the front page of a report that would indicate the demographic information for the student. And then the standard score profile. And so here you can see the student's standard score, percentile rank. You can see where it falls, their standard score. You can see the confidence interval. And then the next page provides you with the score summary. So you can actually see their ability score, standard score, percentile rank, confidence interval, et cetera, and the descriptive classification and the age equivalent. So that is what the report will provide. We are at the top of the hour. We've had a couple of questions that we haven't been able to get to, and so I'm wanting to, let me see if I can find in your handout you'll see just a little bit more information about the norm sample, the reliability, the validity, some of the advantages of Ravens that I mentioned early on, and then the website to get more information about Ravens 2, and on the last page, a question, if you have questions, please email me or Jarrett. Jarrett can answer more of the questions about accounts, how to set up accounts or what type of accounts, how you go about structuring an account within a school district, et cetera. If you have questions about the Ravens itself, email them to me. Questions about using the Ravens on Q Global to Jarrett. And we will close out now. It's 11:01.